We have today a second story that serves as a really good case study in the propaganda cycles that are often started by President Trump, but then perpetuated by Fox News, which gets them into the ecosystem and generates these default reflexive talking points that we end up hearing for years from the Trumpist right, despite being completely wrong and free of any facts. And I'm going to explain this entire thing to you. We actually have a couple of propaganda cycle stories for you today. There is a White House national security official named Alexander Vindman. Vindman is a whistleblower. Vindman says he heard the phone call where Donald Trump pushed the Ukrainian president to investigate Trump's political opponents like Joe Biden. Vindman is set to testify before Congress, which is going to be extraordinarily explosive testimony. We are talking about Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, a vetted, that is, national security official, a military veteran. And Donald Trump has previously suggested that whistleblowers, the people going to the whistleblowers with information, that they are basically spies. And Donald Trump alluded to treason. He alluded to the execution of such treasonous spies. And last night on Fox News's Laura Ingraham program, a real doozy of a show, it was suggested that what Alexander Vindman did is espionage, and that Vindman might even be, I hope you're sitting for this one, a Ukrainian double agent. Check this out and pay attention to whether you recognize the person making this argument.
This is buried in the New York Times piece tonight, but I found it very interesting. He's a decorated colonel, by the way, in the Iraq War. But because Colonel Vindman emigrated from Ukraine along with his family when he was a child and is fluent in Ukrainian and Russian, Ukrainian officials sought advice from him about how to deal with Mr. Giuliani, though they typically communicated in English. Now, wait a second, John. Here we have a U.S. national security official who is advising Ukraine while working inside the White House, apparently against the president's interest, and usually they spoke in English. Isn't that kind of an interesting angle on this story?
I find that astounding, and some people might call that espionage, but it doesn't actually seem to add any new facts to what we know. If in terms of, I think Alan raises a good point. Is this a high crime and misdemeanor? Whether you have one person or five people all saying, well, we objected to what the president said with the president of Ukraine, we have the transcript of the call. We can all make our judgment. I don't see how this breaking news actually adds more facts to what we know about whether this is an impeachable offense or not.
So if the guy suggesting this looks familiar, that's John Yoo. He's the guy who imploded when questioned by the late John Conyers when asked whether he thinks that legally the president could have a suspect buried alive. And he does one of the greatest lawyer non-answers, maybe in congressional testimony history, where he says, I've never recommended to a president that they have a suspect buried alive. No, but Counselor Yoo, could the president do that? I don't know why any president would ever do that. I know lots of presidents, no president would do that. This is, for the young people in our audience, we're taking a brief departure from the whistleblower thing. This is a classic clip of Bush administration lawyer John Yoo. Check it out.
Is there anything, Professor Yoo, that the president could not order to be done to a suspect if he believed it necessary for national defense?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think that goes back to the quote you just read, because...
No, I'm just asking you the question. Maybe it does or doesn't, but what do you think?
I think it's the same question that I was asked.
Well, what's the answer?
First, can I make clear, I'm not talking about...
And you don't have to make anything clear. Just answer the question, counsel.
I just want to make sure I'm not saying anything.
You don't have to worry about not saying. Just answer the question.
Okay. My thinking right now.
Yes, right now.
Okay. My thinking right now.
This moment.
Yes. This moment, Mr. Chairman, is that, first, the question you're posing.
What is the answer?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not trying to make you.
I get it. Okay.
Let me answer. I will answer the
question.
No,
you're wasting my time. Look, counsel,
I don't think
We've
the
all
president-
practiced law. Hold it. Could the president order a suspect buried alive?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think that I have ever
I'm asking you that.
given the advice that the president could bury somebody alive.
I didn't ask you if you ever gave him advice. I asked you, do you think the president could order a suspect buried alive?
Mr. Chairman, my view right now is that I don't think a president would, no American president would ever have to order that or feel it necessary to order that.
I think we understand the games that are being played.
Yeah, so that guy thinks that the whistleblower might be a spy Ukrainian double agent. Last week, I had a caller who said, wait, David, I thought Republicans were for military veterans. I thought they supported the troops. And I explained to you, that's only true when it serves their political goals. Here's a military veteran who they are smearing as a spy because it doesn't serve their political goals to say, hey, you know what? We respect the troops. We support the troops. And if this guy is a veteran of the American military, then maybe we should listen to what he has to say. Now, this may deliberately or accidentally get Lieutenant Colonel Vindman killed. This is serious stuff, what they are doing, okay? When you have someone that Donald Trump, who is looked up to as a deity by Trumpists, say the whistleblowers may be spies or treasonous, that's already endangering their lives. When you then perpetuate the propaganda on the echo chamber that is Fox News, with John Yoo saying, this guy could be a double agent, this guy could be working for Ukraine, you are literally endangering this man's life. Now, they are now, as predicted, shifting to attacking the whistleblower and the whistleblower's character to get their base fired up and to shift the focus off of what Trump did to how we found out about it. This is a very common tactic that, to be perfectly frank, is often employed by the left and the right. When you have a leak or a whistle being blown, if you like the content, you focus on the content. If you don't, you focus on how we found out about it. And isn't it terrible how this information went public? That the left and right does this. Vindman, importantly, though, is blowing the whistle to protect our country against Donald Trump, who is putting our national security at risk, our sovereignty at risk. And the way that this fits into the propaganda cycle is that the Trumpists will chug this nonsense like it's being ladle fed to them, and it will become the go-to talking point. The whistleblower, you're talking about the spy Ukrainian double agent who is a treasonous whatever, charge him right away. Really dangerous times that we're living in, and this one is really simple to understand. Espionage has a very specific definition politically. Spying to obtain political and military information. Well, what do we mean by spying? Is just hearing something spying? No. Spying is work for a government or organization done by secretly collecting information about enemies or competitors. Lieutenant Colonel Vindman works for the U.S. and blew the whistle in the U.S. because he's worried about how Donald Trump is hurting the U.S. That's not espionage. That's not treason. It's none of the above. It's really important we understand it because they are putting people's lives at risk.